Welcome everyone. Let's all agree on our roles before we start the interview. Mark, you've interviewed Patricia previously, haven't you?
Yeah, she interviewed quite well from a technical point of view. I would say she's a strong candidate, but I would like to know more about whether she can really manage the stress and the traveling that's involved in this role.
Okay, so what competencies do you think we most need to focus on to help us make a decision today?
Well, I'd cover all of them, especially achieving results. But I'd like to hear also about her experience with clients and innovation and change. I'm also looking for someone who's able to communicate well with team members.
Okay, well let's discuss which of us are going to address which competencies. What would you like to focus on, Mark?
I'll take client orientation.
Okay, Janet?
I'll take communication and knowledge sharing.
Okay, so Victoria, are you okay with innovation and change?
Yes, I'm fine with that.
Okay, so why don't I ask about achieving results then? Is there anything that you'd like to talk about before we start though, Victoria?
Yeah, I think now would be a good time to remind us all to be aware of any bias in our thinking that could influence our judgment of Patricia. Let's stay focused on her competencies, and if we can also try to keep our questions short, clear, and precise, but at the same time make sure that they are open questions that will give her the opportunity to really give us a comprehensive answer. Can I suggest we use the STAR technique when we ask questions?
Okay. Could you remind us,
Yes.
all of us here,
Okay,
about what
sure.
STAR means?
Okay.
But quickly, because we only have a minute.
All right, so very briefly, STAR stands for situation or task, action, and result. So the first question asks about a situation or a task that she's performed in the past. The second question is about any actions that she may have taken with regards to that task. And the third question is about the result.
Thanks for the recap, Victoria. Well, I think we're just about ready to start. Before I ask her to come in, could everyone please turn off their cells and Blackberries? Take a seat. Thank you. Patricia, thank you for being here today. I'll introduce everyone, but I think you've already met Mark and perhaps Victoria, you met her this morning.
Hi.
So that just leaves Janet. And Janet is from one of our regional departments and is an independent panellist. She helps us assess your suitability from an organisational point of view. And finally, me, Imrana, I'm the head of department. So you've completed your technical interview. This is what we call our employment interview, which covers our core competencies relevant to ADB. We'd like to ask you a few questions to help us understand how your consultant's experience and ways of working might be a fit for ADB. I'm sure you'll have questions yourself, Patricia, and there'll be time to do that after we ask you our questions. In a moment, I'll ask Mark to start with the first question, and then we'll each of you ask about the different competencies. Mark, would you like to start?
Yes, thank you. Patricia, I'd like to ask you about your work with clients. If successful, I'm sure your work here in ADB would involve a lot of work with clients. We have some of ADB's biggest and most important countries within our department, and in the past we've occasionally had feedback about our responsiveness, especially to their particular needs. We've been working hard on ensuring that we listen to clients, although of course it's not always possible to do everything the client wants and in the way they like it. We place certain conditions on loans, for example, although I'm sure you'll be familiar with that scenario. Sometimes we find ourselves in a conflict between our requirements and the clients. Could you describe a situation when you've had to reconcile different needs from the client and your organizations, for example, and make sure that the relationship with the client remains positive?
Yes, I can. In fact, I think really every project is a negotiation between the client and my organization. The last project I managed had a number of areas where we needed to be very clear about the conditions. I think the main thing is to keep the common goal in mind and to communicate as well as possible what the conditions are and why.
Can you explain what it was you actually did and how you communicated to the client?
Oh yes. Well, what I found very useful is to keep the client informed, but also aware that I'm listening to their needs and concerns. In the last project, I spent a lot of time in discussion with the client on what they need and brought in other members of my team in particular to share their ideas based on their expertise. I spent a lot of time working with the team to find solutions that the client found acceptable, even if it wasn't really exactly what they liked.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Patricia, I wondered if I could just ask you, at ADB, we have a philosophy that encourages colleagues to share concepts and their thinking around their areas of expertise so that we can keep building our capabilities. Now, I think that's really important for an MDB. Would you agree?
Oh yes, definitely. We do this regularly in the organization where I'm working at the moment, and I find it very valuable.
Patricia, could you give us an example where you have been involved in some sort of change management or innovation work?
Yes, maybe a good example would be a strategy review we completed 3 months ago. It was one of my tasks to lead the project group to do an initial review of our sector strategy and make recommendations for changes.
Okay. And how did you approach that?
It was fairly standard, I think. First, I asked the people that are most experienced and at the forefront of thinking in the sector to be involved. It was quite a mixed group, which I think is good because of the diversity of opinion that brings. I called the meeting with the main purpose of agreeing on the terms of reference for the work. The main outcome of that was that, well, we all agreed that we should seek advice and input from experts in other institutions. We looked at our policy and strategy, and each person took on responsibility for an area of research, using their contacts outside our organization. Now, there was a lot of work, discussions, and ideas exchanged that we did as part of the project. But I think the idea of sharing information from other organizations had a major impact on our thinking.
And what was the outcome of the work you did?
The review took us 6 months, which was quite a long time, but of course everyone had other commitments as well. We put together a paper which made some specific recommendations for change based on our fieldwork and the research we did, and this resulted in a revised strategy that I think took our sector forward.
That's great, thank you. Now, can you clarify, what was your role in the actual preparation of the paper?
I took the lead in writing the draft and was responsible in incorporating everyone's inputs.
Okay, thank you, Patricia.
Patricia, I'd like to ask you a bit about the challenges you faced and about achieving results, especially in a place like this where you have to work to deadlines and where you travel a lot, there's missions to attend to, balancing that work-life, trying to achieve that work-life balance. These are very significant challenges. Is any of this an issue for you?
Well, actually, that is the nature of my work now. So I think I'm no different to any of my colleagues in seeing travel and deadlines as necessary elements of the work. And I would expect the same in this role in ADB if I were to come here.
Thank you, Patricia, and thank you for all your answers. I'll just ask the panel if they have any further questions.
No, I'm good, thank you.
In that case, this is your chance to ask us questions.
Well, I did ask quite a number of questions in the previous interview and have had a chance before to talk to someone from the HR team about some of ADB's principles and policies, and was especially interested in people strategy. Maybe just one question, and that's about whether ADB provides staff any support for continuing education.
Yes, well, I'll ask Human Resources to respond to that.
And that's how we support our staff with education assistance, so I hope this was helpful to you.
Thank you, that's very useful information.
Are there any other questions you'd like to ask us, Patricia?
No, not at this point. Thank you very much.
Well, in that case, I'd like to thank you for making time to come here today. It's been very nice to meet you. And I'll just ask somebody from Human Resources to take care of you from here.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Patricia. It's nice to meet you.
So, I thought she was very pleasant. Came across very well. Perhaps we can just go around and I can ask each of you what your views are on her in relation to her employment suitability. Janet, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. Well, I thought she gave some good answers, like you say. She seemed to be able to take on a leadership role that came across. I think she's been involved in some advanced thinking about the sector. I noticed her answers there. and I think that's especially important in the transport sector, because this is, of course, an important sector for us. I think she'd be a good contributor. It sounded like she works collaboratively with colleagues, so yeah, I'm quite positive, really.
Okay, thank you. Victoria?
I agree with Janet, but I think I would have liked to have heard more about how she communicates and shares information with colleagues. But I do think some of that came across. So if the technical panel is satisfied with her technical expertise, I think she would be a good hire for ADB.
Thank you. Mark?
I'm comfortable that she'll be able to handle the stresses of the position. She seems to understand that the job will be challenging regarding travel and deadlines, and I'm happy with her answers on innovation and change. And I'm also getting some ideas that she works well with colleagues, which is important to the division. If she works well with the COP, that'll be a big benefit for the sector also. She seems to be quite committed to developing the sector. So the hiring department, as the hiring department, I'd support recommending her for transport specialist. Level 4 seems appropriate relative to our team makeup and her extent of work experience.
So I take it that everyone's in agreement here. Thank you. So if I can just get all your signatures, thank you for taking the time to be here today and participating in the interview.